at all times. Avoid sending children to shops and markets. Do not engage children in petty trading on the streets and garages. Allow children to play within the confines of the home. Limit visitors into your homes. Adhere to COVID-19 health precautions and guidelines. Schools are closed, but learning continues. There
Good day, viewers and listeners. My name is Samuel Emendi, and today's lesson we are looking at ecology. And ecology, I may start with the definition first. What is ecology, if I may ask? Ecology is a study of interaction between organisms and their environment. People interact with one another. Organisms in the forest interact with each other or with one another, and then in our day-to-day activities we interact with living and non-living. We also interact different ways. Sometimes we may not notice it, sometimes we notice it, but in this discussion or in this lesson we are going to look at interactions. And we said, as we discussed, ecology is the interrelation between organisms and their environment. The picture that you are seeing on the screen is a particular type of fish. This is a coral fish. It's been cleaned by a cleanser wrasser. Cleaner wrasse are small fish that eat parasitic and debarics of what large fish. Like sometimes when a fish eats another fish, some of the remains that attach to that fish is eaten by this cleaner wrasse. So we are also going to look at another interaction between certain types of ants. This ant is called an acacian ant that have a unique relationship with an acacian tree in which they live. Okay, if you look at this level of biological organization, these are different pictures showing different images. We have one is organism, we have a population, we have a community, we have an ecosystem, a biome, and the biosphere. So it starts from a small unit to a larger unit. So the organism is the smaller, like the picture that you are seeing there is the deer. And there you are seeing populations of other animals. And that's a particular, just a certain group of animals, that's a population of them. And in the community, we are seeing different organisms. We have a deer, we have birds, and also we have what? Mushroom plants. And here we have an ecosystem. Here you can see the sun, you can see the sunlight, you can see the rain pouring down, you can see the animals, you can see the plants. It's an interaction, it's an ecosystem. And here we have a biome. You have land, you have water, you have also plants on top. And here you talk about the biosphere, the world, like the earth itself. So we are going to look at this one after the other. We are going to be defining them and be discussing. We say a population is a group of individuals that live in the same area, can interbreed and share the same gene pool. You know, like for instance, you cannot, when you are counting population, like for instance, when they are doing the population census, they have to count like human beings. Also, you have, like in that, you also count like number of animals that are found there. But you cannot put human beings and animals as a same population. No, they cannot be on the same population. Either you count the population of cows, the population of goats, they must be of the same, that can interbreed. Like for instance, human beings, they have a particular population. Some of these cows, they have their own population, and the plants, they have their population based on their species. We say a population is a group of individuals or organisms that live in the same area, can interbreed, and share the same gene pool. They share the same gene pool. So when there is a population, evolution sometimes tends to occur. We say evolution occurs at a population level. Individual organisms cannot evolve. Formation of new species happen as individuals within a population undergo changes in their genotypes and phenotypes. Like for instance, in a particular place, you are living there and then you tend to move to another location. Sometimes the environment will make you to change your physical makeup. Or sometimes some of this food that you eat may make you to change your genetic makeup. The genotypes, we talk about the genetic makeup of an organism, while the phenotype is the physical or the outward appearance of an organism. Due to evolution, people tend to change. Organisms tend to change over time. So from a population, we are moving to a community. A community, different populations coming together. Okay, like for instance, we said a community is composed of all the different populations of species that live in a given area. There must be a different population of species that live in a different area. Like for instance, like if you look at the school, a school setting, we have a different communities there. We have the teaching staff, we have the students, you have also the ancillary staff, you also have vendors. All of these people, they are all human beings, but they are doing a specific job at a specific time. Or also, you can also have the plants, like you have the garden, where the gardeners are there, they are doing their work. Or if you go to a zoo, where you have different types of animals, you are seeing that different populations there, they are in that zoo performing their task, and people are feeding them, and everyone doing their own task to make sure that zoo is maintained and keeps on going. We say a community is composed of all the different populations of species that live in a given area. Organisms within a community interact with each other, ways that can be both beneficial and harmful. So sometimes when organisms interact, even the mouth and the tongue, sometimes when you are speaking, may bite your tongue. So that is what you are interacting. That is, it's an interaction that is taking place. And something happens to, the tongue happens to be beaten by what? By the teeth. Also, competition for what? Food. Like in a population whereby we have different animals. Sometimes the stronger one will feed, and the weaker ones will die as a result of what we call natural selection. We say competition for resources between members of a community is one factor that shapes evolution by natural selection, competing for a particular thing. Like for instance, in this situation we are in, the COVID-19, you see, people will want to buy sanitizers. We are going to be competing for prices. The one who has more money will be able to buy the sanitizers that he wants, because some of these people will charge at a higher price. But because as we are competing, and naturally, the one who has the money will be able to buy, and the ones that does not have the money will not be able to buy. It's natural. That means that it's the law of nature that dictates it. So we are competing. Like also when there is food, a lion and a tiger is there. They are competing, like that's a deer that they want to kill these ones to eat. And the plants. And in between, there are different forms of organisms that are found in that. So it's an interactions of what both the living and non-living that exist in a particular community. We call it an ecosystem. Okay? And the bigger picture is the biome. That have similar climates, animals and plants. They all have what you call similar climates, animal and plant. What you are seeing here, these are what you call coral reefs that exist in both Atlantic and the Pacific. And this is an example of what we call a marine biome. This marine biome is found inside water and is salt water. And these are the two biggest oceans in the world, the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Pacific being the biggest, followed by the Atlantic oceans. And there's an interactions that is taking place in this biome. However, all reefs are found in shallows, nutrients-rich water, and inhabited by similar organisms. Some of these biomes are inhabited by similar organisms. Sometimes if you watch this television, this DRTS or some of these channels, you see they put on a documentary on the TV or on the channel showing the different organisms interacting in different areas. Sometimes you see a biome there where organisms interact with each other. And when you talk about a biome, you say these are groups of ecosystems that have similar climate, similar animals, and plants. They can either be terrestrial or they can be marine. Okay? And the bigger picture is the biosphere. And you say the biosphere is the portion of the earth in which all life exists. Any part, any place on the earth where life exists, we call that place a biome. This includes the land, water, and air. So these are very, very important for us to understand. As a biome is any place on earth where life exists. So these are examples of what you call a terrestrial biomes. Terrestrial biomes. The first one, we are seeing a desert. And when we talk about a desert, it's a barren place, a barren area of land or a deserted terrain. And most of the time, the plants that grow in a desert, they are xerophytes. Examples of these xerophytes are these palm trees or these round palms. They are resilient to dryness. They stay there for a long period of time. And they can withstand dryness. Okay, that's what you call, these are desert plants, xerophytes. The other thing also, we look at temperate forest. Some of this temperate, you say temperate forest is moderate and not excessive hot climate. A temperate forest is a place that is moderate and not excessively hot. Like for instance, if you have been riding or going to Birkama, you find this Nyambai forest when you are going to Birkama on your right. But it's saddened now that the forest has disappeared. But before, the place was beautiful. If you are going around, if you are going to Birkama and you see the forest, and that has also contributed to a lot of rainfall for us. But nowadays, the place is just like a desert. But you said a temperate forest is a moderate and not excessive hot climate. And some countries, they experience a rainforest. So another thing is that a rainforest biome. This one is a very thick place. A forest in which climate with high annual rainfall and no dry season. Gambia, we do not experience these types of weather because here we only have 2 seasons, wet and dry. And nowadays our wet season is only about 2 to 3 months because our forest vegetation has been destroyed. We don't have a thick forest that's going to help us to have more rains. So that's why we are encouraging each and every one of us to plant trees around our homes, to beautify our environment. This will help us by bringing more rain to us, and our farmers will be happy to produce good crops for us. And at the end, we are going to be the ultimate, we will have the ultimate goal by eating fresh fruits and with disease from fruits that have been imported from other parts of the country to the Gambia. We also talk about temperate grasslands, environment that is not extreme or excessive heated. The temperate grassland and the temperate forest. Here, this grassland, we don't find much trees there. It's only grasslands. It's not extremely hot. Most of the lands in the Gambia is just like it's a temperate grassland. We also have a savanna. Savanna is a tropical grassland with scattered trees. You can see the picture. The trees are scattered. You can count them, 1, 2, you can count the number of trees there. The trees are scattered everywhere. We have the Taiji, a subarctic zone of evergreen coniferous forests. These are what you call the Tangi. We have the tundra, a flat and treeless Arctic biome. This one, it does not have trees. They are treeless. It's a flat land and it's treeless. We have the Capral, a region of shrubs, typically dry in the summer and rainy in the winter, like a region of shrubs, trees, typically dry in the summer. Few things are existing there, and wet during the rainy season. The alpine, okay? Any of the several plants native to the mountain habitats. These ones, they are mostly found in mountainous areas like the avalanches. These areas, that's where, like some of these Asian countries, we find these places there. So we talked about terrestrial biome. So now we are moving toward marine biomes. We have fresh water, a stream of springs of water. Like most of the time, if we go around some of these villages, we have what we call fresh water. In this fresh water, we have streams of water, like for instance, some places like Pansang, some places like Bruvut. We have a lot of this fresh water during the rainy season. Sometimes we even go on fishing. Okay, in some of these villages, we have some of this fresh water there. And then we have freshwater wetlands and areas that is characteristically saturated. Like for instance, the picture that we are seeing here, these examples of what freshwater wetlands, and it's saturated a lot of things, organisms, fish. Some things are all saturated. They are all there. The place is a bit rich of what some organisms and some nutrients. And marine, basically the sea, the ozones. The coral reefs. Back again, we are talking about the coral reefs. These are hard substances made up of limestone skeleton of marine polyps. The estuaries, and we said where ocean tides and river water meets or emerge. Now, there are some questions that they are going to be looking at from what we have just discussed. I just want to test your ability whether we are understanding what we are discussing. Say, which of the following levels of biological organization include all the others? We say a community, an ecosystem, organism, and population. Okay, we'll find out that the correct answer is ecosystem. That is option B, which is the correct answer, the ecosystem. So now we are moving toward population ecology. So in this population ecology, we are going to be looking at factors, a habitat or niche. We are going to look at population growth, common ecological instruments. If time permits us, we will look at all these things today. First of all, what is population ecology? We say population ecology studies the interactions between a population and its environment. You have to look at the interaction between a particular population and the environment in which that population is. Like for instance, in a school, you have to look at the population ecology of the students with some of the things that they interact with in the school. They interact with teachers, they interact with their books, they go to the library to read, they go to the computer classes, they have discussions under the trees. They are interacting with their environment. They even have to go to the garden to study it and to look at some of the things that they are doing. They are interacting with their environment to enhance their learning, to make their learning easy. So now, here, the picture that we are seeing a toad. We say a population ecology studies the interactions between a population and its environment. And that picture is a toad that we are seeing. So now, the water-holding frog of Australian burrows into the ground during the dry season. That means that it digs inside the ground during the dry season. Okay? It surrounds itself with what? Watertight mucous secretion. So now, when it digs inside the ground, there's watertight secretion that surrounds its environment. And that watertight secretion, it plays an important role in protecting the toad or the frog. Okay? It's tight mucous secretion that acts as a cocoon or a protective case. It protects the frog. When it rains, the frog emerges to lay eggs. So during the rainy season, the frog lays eggs, and these eggs hatch and develop into tadpoles, and quickly before the puddles disappear, before that water that was there simply disappeared. So now that means that the frog is able to lay eggs. The eggs are hatched, developed to tadpoles. Before the water disappears, all those toads, they are matured and they start moving around on their own. So factors. Populations are affected. All populations are affected negatively or positively by a variety of factors in their environment. Like for instance, human beings, we are affected positively or negatively by some of the factors that are surrounding us, either by feeding, or we don't have work, we don't have housing, we don't have proper education. These are some of the factors. Okay, but thank God that now the Gambia education system, they're encouraging no one to be left out of school. We should all be in school. So we should thank our government for that and our ministry for that. We said the surrogate cactus. So this is an example that we are seeing. We are seeing a picture of a cactus. And this type of cactus, they are not easily found in our region here. They are found in most of these countries like Mexico. This is what you call the surrogate cactus, are desert plants with adaptation that enable it to live in dry conditions. This cactus has the ability to live, because by looking at the cactus and the trees that are the shrubs that are around it, you see there are differences. This cactus, the outer covering is a bit thick and succulent. That's enable it to live under hard conditions or conditions that are extremely hard. Okay, this cactus will be able to live in those types of environment. Okay, they have one large taproot that extends into the ground with small, shallow roots that quickly absorb any water that falls. So now if you look at this cactus, there's one taproot, there's one main root that extends deep inside the soil, okay, and deep inside the ground, and it's able to have water. It's able to absorb nutrients from that taproot, and there are small, shallow roots that are not deeply rooted in the ground. The cactus has some spines. The spine helps channel water, redirect wind, protect the cactus from animals, and insulate and separate the cactus. Okay? Some animals, such as pack rats, eat the cactus. Other animals, such as bats, eat the fruits of the cactus, aiding in pollination and dispersal of seeds. A question: name one positive factor and one negative factor that affects the cactus or the surrogates. So in this, we are seeing that there are what you call the negative factors and the positive factors. So I will not do it for you. I'll leave it for you to try and see the outcome. Positive factors and the negative factors that affect the cactus. Okay? So now, when you talk about the factors, we said we have what we call abiotic factors and biotic factors. So, but today, for now, we are going to be looking at what we call abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are physical, non-living factors that shape an organism. These are physical, non-living organisms that shape an organism. On the screen, what we are seeing there, we are seeing the sun is a factor. We see rainfall is a factor. We see the wind is a factor. And temperature is a factor. So these factors, we call them, they are non-living factors. They are abiotic. So if you look at that, in that red square or box, we said it's a sunlight is a factor, precipitation. And when you talk about precipitation, we are talking about the rain. It's a factor. These are abiotic factors. And then talk about temperature. Okay? And you said, and we see that thermometer there is to represent the temperature, the unit in which we measure temperature, how hot or cold a substance is. And also talk about the wind. You can see the image there of demonstrating the wind, the soil type, and nutrients availability. So on the soil type is here in the next slide. The soil type, we talk about there are some crops that do well in a particular soil, whereas others do not do well in that particular soil. So as a farmer, you should know which type of crops that you grow in this soil and what type of crop you grow in that other soil. It's very, very important to know that as a farmer. Okay? And also, when you grow these crops, there are also nutrients that are needed. We talked earlier on the macronutrients and micronutrients. The nutrients that are needed by a plant in large quantity and nutrients that are needed by the plant in small quantity. So these are the things that we said, they are abiotic factors, the non-living factors. Okay? So now we move on to what we call biotic factors. These are the factors that are the living things that make up an ecosystem. If we can see on the screen, different organisms there. We have the plants, we have the animals, we have the fungi like the mushroom, and we have also bacteria. And some, we cannot see bacteria here. If at all, if we can see it with our naked eyes, we are able to trace it out there. Okay? So these are the living factors that affect an ecosystem. So now let's go back. Let's recap the cactus. So I told you that the cactus, I was going to leave it for you. So but now I brought the question again. So we are going to revisit the cactus. We said the Sauroges cactus are desert plants which have adaptation that enable it to live in dry conditions. They have one large taproot that extends into the ground with small, shallow roots that quickly absorb any water that falls. Spines help to channel water, redirect the wind, protect the cactus from the animals, and isolate the cactus. Some animals, such as park rats, eat the cactus. Other animals, such as birds, eat the fruits of the cactus, aiding in pollination and dispersal of seeds. List 2 abiotic and 2 biotic factors that affect the Sauroges cactus. I think by now you should be able to list some of those factors. Please remember, we said abiotic factors are the non-living things, and we said the biotic, they are the living things. So I'll leave these questions to you to try it by yourself, whether you can do it. I guess by now you should be able to do that question. It says all of the following are abiotic factors except, and what do you say about abiotic factors? They are the non-living. I guess now you remember that the non-living organisms. Okay? You say microorganisms, the pH, temperature, nutrients. So I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it and come up with an answer. I guess, how many of you selected A? Yes, A is the correct answer. All of the following are abiotic factors except A. A is a living organism. That we talk about microorganisms, they are living. Okay, that's like, for instance, bacteria and other things. It says, which of the following levels of biological organization includes both abiotic and biotic factors? We said abiotic factors are the non-living, and biotic factors are the living. We said which of them? Please, I'm giving you another 5 seconds again to select the right option. Can I read the question again? Okay, let me read it. Which of the following levels of biological organizations include both abiotic factors and biotic factors? A, species. B, population. C, community. D, ecosystem. Yes, D is the correct answer. Those who selected D, you are right. Is the correct answer. Those who did not get it, please try the next time again. You may have it. Okay. Here's another question again. It says sea turtle undergoes temperature-dependent sex determination. That means that the sex of the sea turtle is determined by the temperature. Whether the sea turtle is a male or a female, that is determined by the temperature. The prevailing temperature during embryonic development, at the early stage of developmental stage, during fertilization and the embryonic development of this is determines the sex of the turtle. Warm temperature results to female, while cold temperature results to male. What type of factors influence the sex of the sea turtle? It is A or B. I think this one is an easy question for you to know. Yeah? We said, which one is a living? We say, what type of factors influence the sex of the sea turtle? Temperature, it is living. The temperature is what we are discussing about here. So I give you 5 seconds again to discuss, to come up with the answer. Okay? So those of you who choose B, you are right. The correct answer is abiotic factors. B is the correct answer. So now we are looking at a habitat. Okay, we have different populations and we have different communities interacting together. Okay, in this habitat. So now they say the term habitat describes the specific area, including biotic and abiotic factors, where an organism lives within an ecosystem. It includes biotic and abiotic factors, where organisms live in an ecosystem. We say a habitat is like an organism's home within an ecosystem. Like, for instance, you are seeing this ecosystem. Okay? An organism can decide to go and stay in a particular area. Okay? Can decide to go and stay in a particular area or to live in a particular place. So that's what you call a habitat. It's a particular home of an organism. Okay? This is an ecosystem to show you a habitat of an organism. So now we are looking at what we call ecological niche. An ecological niche is a description of a role an organism plays in its habitat. You are describing a role the organism plays in its habitat. A niche includes all aspects of where an organism is and how it lives, where the organism is and how that organism lives. We are talking about the ecological niche. An ecological niche includes the following: the types of food the organism eats, how it obtains food, how that organism obtains food, where that organism lives in its environment, like for instance, the trees, the nest, the hive, etc. And then when and how it reproduces. The time, when, and how does it do its reproduction. So that is it. If you look at this image here, look at a dragon niche, a Kamura dragon niche. This ecological niche of this organism, it has the ability to move around in these areas and has a place to rest, or a hole where it goes and rest. Like this type of reptiles you call the kana. Okay, it's during rainy season, these types of organisms are very common in the bush. You go around, you see them, or sometimes you are frightened by them. They come after our chickens. Okay, this is a particular forms of a reptile. I want to explain ecological niche in relation to my principles. So, like for instance, in the school, he has different things that he looks after, or he has to look at the welfare of the school. And one of the things that he does, he looks at the teachers, how they are delivering in their classes. He goes around to see whether people are coming to school on time or not. He sees the students, whether they are disturbing or not. If any time that he hears the noise, him and the vice principal, he goes around and to check. And sometimes he goes to the mosque during the prayer hours to pray. And also, from time to time, he visits the gardens to check how the work is being done and to supervise the projects that have been going around in the school. All those activities that he's doing, that's what he has, his ecological niche in the school. It's not only that particular place where his office, where he sits and do his activity. That's just like a habitat for that place. But his ecological niche, all the activities that is supervising in the school, and some of the projects that is looking at, is part of his ecological niche. Still, we are stressing on ecological niche so that we not miss ecological niche and a habitat. We said, we are looking at this image. No two species can occupy the same niche in the same environment at the same time. Like for instance, as I use the example of Mr. Jang and Mr. Gay, they cannot use the same office and do their work at the same time. So that's why Mr. Jang has an office, Mr. Gay, the vice principal, also has his office. So they have different places where they operate. So now he says no two species, no two people can occupy the same ecological niche in the same environment at the same time. If this occurs, competition for resources will display one of the species. So now if this thing happens, if they are in the same place, they are going to be competing for resources. These organisms will also compete for resources. Which one will be displaced and which one will remain? So the one that will be displayed is the one that is like the weaker one will have to go and leave the space for the one that is stronger, or the one that is having more authority. The figure below shows 3 different species of whalebas that have established different niche in the same tree. You see, we can see here the tree is about 18 meters tall. Okay, and we have 3 birds that are occupying different niche on the tree. Okay, on the right hand side, we say we have bay-breasted weaver. Okay, this type of bird, it is the niche is in the middle. And then you move on to the right hand side, the yellow from the down, we have the yellow rumped weaver. Feeds in the lower parts of the tree and at the bases of the middle branches. You see where the circle is, that's where it feeds, at the lower part of the tree and at the base. And that's where it has its own ecological niche. It does not go to the other side. And then you have the Cape May weaver, feeds at the tip of the branches near the top of the tree. So these 3 organisms, they show their ecological niche are shown in their way of their activities here. As I said, ecological niche is not just a particular portion, and it's that area that surrounds that organism. Okay, that is ecological niche. So now, an American green tree frogs lives in the southern upper state near bodies of water that have plentiful vegetation. This is the frog's habitat or a niche. The correct answer is a habitat. The place is a habitat. This is this frog's habitat. So now it says, hyenas are carnivorous animals that live in Africa. They live in clans that are led by females. Hyenas are successful at both hunting and scavenging food. This describes a highness what? I'm giving you another 5 seconds to think about the answer. I guess we have just discussed the ecological niche and a habitat. I know this time around you will get it. Okay? Those of you selected B, a niche, is the correct. The correct answer is ecological niche because they are successful in both hunting and scavenging food. That means they go around looking. They don't just stay in one place. And also, while they are hunting, they are also going around looking for what? For organisms. So now we talk about population growth. Ecologists are interested in how population change over time. Okay? That's supposed to be one of the factors that we have to look at, population growth. Like in the Gambia here, if you look at the KMC, population growth is rampant, is increasing. People are coming from the provinces, coming to the urban areas for what? Greener pasture. They want to have a white-collar job. They want to have daily sustenance every day. But these things, they have to move from those areas to the urban areas here. It says population growth is dependent on the number of births and the number of deaths, okay, and the number of individuals who enters or leaves a population. And here we talk about immigration and immigration. Immigration and immigration. That means E-M-I-G-R-A-T-I-O-N. That means you are leaving and entering a particular area. Okay? You are leaving a particular place. You are immigrating. Like somebody is coming from Guinea-Bissau or from Senegal, entering to the Gambia. Is immigrating, is leaving Senegal, coming to the Gambia for a permanent resident in the Gambia. Or likewise, if a Gambian is leaving the Gambia to Senegal, is also going to stay there, is immigrating to that place, is leaving the Gambia and staying in Senegal for what? Permanent resident. That's what immigration. So if you look at this image, you are seeing some birds. Some are immigrating and they are entering. They are leaving and entering to a particular environment or a particular territory. It could be as a result of what? Food, or it could be as a result of what? Better habitat they are looking for. Okay? So immigrating and immigration. You are entering. Immigrating, that means you are entering to a particular territory or area. So now population growth depends on availability of resources. Populations can follow two main patterns of what growth. When we talk about two types of what population growth, the one we call exponential growth and logistic growth. Exponential growth. Exponential growth occurs when a population reproduces at a constant rate. The population is reproducing at a constant growth. That's what you call exponential growth. Okay, like looking at the graph, it is going at a particular rate. Okay, the graph is moving at a particular. That's what you call exponential growth. Exponential growth occurs in the absence of what? Predation. When another animal feeds on another animal, when another organism feeds on another organism, or like disease. Like the world is now, what the world is experiencing is not exponential growth, because there's an outbreak of what? This a pandemic. It's an outbreak of pandemic, and many people are dying. Okay, and we cannot consider that as what? An exponential growth. We say an exponential growth happens in the absence of what? Predation, absence of what? Disease, and also in the presence of what? Limited resources. That means resources are available. But like for instance, in the Gambia and some of the area in the Combos here, resources may be available. But the habitat, like home, is difficult to find. Like for instance, if you want to look for a house, they tell you that a house is 4,500 or 5,000, 2 rooms and a parlor. You see, it is not an exponential growth. It's not an exponential growth. So now you say exponential growth occurs in the presence of what? Unlimited resources, like for instance, food and habitat. Okay. So now we are still talking about exponential growth in terms of bacteria, and we said bacteria reproduce by what you call binary fission. Bacteria can be grown under an optimal conditions. That means unlimited resources in a laboratory setting. If a bacterial population reproduces every 20 minutes, it can be grown to a population size of 4.27 times 10 to the power 20 bacteria in a day. So that means that the population, the growth of the bacteria is very fast and is rapid. That's what we call exponential growth. So the next types of growth is called the logistic growth. We said most populations do not have unlimited resources. They do not have unlimited resources. When a population becomes too large, it exhausts food supply, water supply, and shelter, and population size stop increasing. Like for instance, in the Gambia, you see, as I was saying earlier on, we find this, we are growing more on what logistically. So sometimes it is some of the things that we are experiencing. We have shelter is what is exhausted. It's very, very difficult to have shelter. And sometimes if you are going to look for a house, they charge you a lot of price. So that's what we're talking about. You say, as urban development destroys natural habitat, many animal populations becomes overpopulated. There are not enough resources to support the population. So now when people are overpopulated, there are not enough resources to support that population. So that means that we are growing logistically, okay? So now looking at the graph, the carrying capacity. We say the population size that can be maintained with a given amount of resources is called the carrying capacity. Populations that are limited in the resources experience logistic growth. So now when our resources are limited, we have to manage things. We are going to do it. We are doing some logistics. And this logistics, we may find it very difficult to manage some of these resources. So from here, we move to an ecological instrument. We move to ecological instruments and their functions. When you talk about ecological instruments, I'm just going to quickly brush this thing through because time is not on our side. I said rain gauge measures the amount of a rainfall. Okay, the instrument is called the rain gauge. And what is the functions of the rain gauge? It measures the amount of a rainfall. We have also what you call a minimum and a maximum thermometer. It measures the lowest and the maximum temperature of a given day. We have what you call the ammeter, measures the speed of wind. The wind vane indicates the directions of the wind. Hygrometer measures relative humidity. The barometer measures the atmospheric pressure. The photo or the light meter measures the intensity of light on the land. So please, there are a lot of ecological instruments and their functions. And one of the things that you need to do is, I think in the next lesson, we will look at some of these instruments, we'll draw them, and then we will discuss them in detail. Okay? So now we move on. We said a population can grow exponentially under ideal conditions. Which of the following would prevent exponential growth from continuing? A, the population is protected from predators. B, the population is protected from disease. The population runs out of food. D, reproduction occurs at a steady rate. Remember, we are looking at exponential growth. A population can go exponential growth under ideal conditions. Which of the following would prevent exponential growth from continuing? I'm giving you 2 seconds to answer the question. And those of you selected C, the population runs out of food, is correct. So number 8, exponential growth does not occur for long in nature, and eventually all population growth slow down. A population's maximum size is referred to as its limiting growth capacity, current capacity is B, C, logistic growth, D, exponential growth. So I'm giving you another 2 seconds to answer the question. And the time is up. Those of you who choose B, current capacity, is correct. Okay, I think this is where we are going to end for today's lesson. Thank you and have a good day. Until I come your way, I was your teacher, Mr. Samuel Emende. Thank you and bye-bye. Have a good day.
Hello viewers, these are key messages from the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education on the coronavirus. Dear parents, keep children at home at all times. Avoid sending children to shops and markets. Do not engage children in petty trading on the streets and garages. Allow children to play within the confines of the home. Limit visitors into your homes. Adhere to COVID-19 health precautions and guidelines. Schools are closed, but learning continues. Dear teachers, you are encouraged to desist from all forms of group activities involving students. All school premises should remain closed and not to be used for any other purpose. Thank you.